Welcome to another episode of Power Core Productions and Podcastings. I am your host, Javon Harrington, back to hit you with another video. And today, it's going to be a one video day, but it's a video that I'm sure you guys have all been waiting for. That is, What If Naruto Was in High School DxD, Season 2, Part 3, the finale, Rise of the White Dragon. I'm going to say that I am truly enjoying the reboot so far. Rewriting this series has been amazing. The support has been great. And I want to say thank you to everyone that supports Power Core Productions and Podcastings. We are close to 800 subscribers, on the road to 1K and beyond. Truly looking forward to everything that we have accomplished in 2021 and everything that we will accomplish in 2022. So that's been pretty sweet. So thank you all for that as well. This intro isn't going to be too long. Do want to say that tomorrow there will be a morning upload as well as Friday. And in tomorrow's afternoon series, we will start Season 3 of What If Naruto Was in High School DxD. Season 3 will be starting tomorrow afternoon, so stay tuned for that and everything else that has to come with Power Core Productions and Podcastings. Remember, you guys make the core grow, you make the channel grow. Cannot do it without you guys, so thank you so much. Very grateful, very thankful. But anyway, we're not going to take too much time, so as always, sit back, relax, and enjoy the show.
押し寄せる感情の命がけの愛は甘くないわつくもとつくどんな嘘が待っていたとしても選んだ導き信じて振る舞うことはないと優しい悪魔の微笑みは儚く全てを照らすの
Naruto would be on his guard as he came face to face with Azazel, the man who was the leader of the fallen angels, the one whom Naruto deemed responsible for all that had befallen him and his comrades. Azazel could see the anger in Naruto's eyes, and he could even sense the dark, malevolent forces within him starting to brim to the surface. Azazel would put Naruto at ease, telling him that he did not come for a fight, and that Naruto should be wise about the battles he chooses to pick. That while he could forgive his ignorance, it would be very unwise for him to attempt a fight. Naruto, while still angered, would yell at Azazel for lying to him, knowing that he were the one responsible. Kokubile had been under his watch, and Rainier also. Azazel would again apologize, stating that Kokubile and Rainier had gone rogue, and that if he had been aware of their actions, he would have stopped them a long time ago. Rainier overstepping her boundaries, as she were not to have killed Naruto in the first place, and that her job was only to be strictly in surveillance. This would still anger Naruto, as Azazel would have admitted to putting Rainier on him in the first place. While Azazel understood that Naruto was very frustrated, at the same time he would give off his own flash and aura, causing Naruto to back down just a bit, understanding fully the situation he were in. Azazel would tell Naruto of the upcoming summit between the leaders of the angels, the fallen angels himself, and the devils. With that, Azazel would bid Naruto farewell, as Naruto would quickly go back to the Occult Research Club, telling Rias everything that had happened. Rias would be angered at the audacity of Azazel to make advances on her servant. However, she would confirm that there was going to be an upcoming summit between the great leaders, within a few days actually, and that this summit could hinge on whether the world would be at peace or suffer yet another war. In the meantime, for Naruto, his life had seemingly become a lot more hectic than normal. For whatever reason, the girls of the House of Grimri seemed to have this weird feeling towards him. It wasn't just Rias and Asya anymore, although they seemed to be rather smothering in their own right. It became apparent that it was also affecting those like Akano, who seemed to always want to get closer to Naruto, much to the chagrin of Rias and Asya. Especially Rias, who seemed to view Akano as a challenger. Asya would seemingly always want to be closer to Naruto and would feel as if she were being left out. Naruto, trying to find peace, wouldn't find it with the others. Konako was alright, but she always seemed to have a rather defensive attitude whenever anyone tried to take Naruto away from her, whenever the two were going out to enjoy a snack or a refreshing drink. And then there was the new member of the team, Zenobia, who flat out admitted that she wanted a baby with Naruto. This being almost a complete 180 from how their relationship had recently been. How they had gone from enemies to somehow being caught up in baby making was the last thing Naruto wanted. And shadow clones were not helping either. As while the girls would admit it was nice for Naruto to make his clones, so that each one could spend quality time with Naruto. After all, each clone was essentially Naruto himself. There was nothing really all that different. Except in the end of the day, they felt as though they should hold claim to the original Naruto. Zenobia making it apparent that she did not want to lose on giving her child the essence of the dragon, and of the fox spirit that Naruto contained, noting that only the original had the boosted gear, and as such she should claim the original. Akano would also try to make advances on the original Naruto, and Asya, while she were happy to spend time with Naruto, felt that she could only enjoy quality time with the original as well. Rias would give off the most damning aura of them all, as she would act as a primal lion fighting for her territory, making it very clear that as the leader of the House of Grimri, only she could lay claim to the original Naruto. But still, every other girl were going to fight for him. Naruto wondering just how on earth his life had come to this, thinking that the last thing he expected was that multiple girls would be fighting for his attention. Not even knowing why, since he didn't even think of himself as being all that great, and wondering why no one went after Kiba. Although Kiba had been seen walking around campus from time to time with Tsubaki, so everyone kind of wondered if something were going on between those two in the meantime. With all of the bickering and complaining amongst the House of Grimri, especially the females, Sir Zex would be greeted to a rather welcoming sight, as he would greet all of them as he had arrived in the town, stating that while he were also arriving for the upcoming summit, it was also open house at the school, and he wanted to check in on how his sister was doing, embarrassing Rias in the process as well. With nowhere to stay, Naruto would just make the suggestion for Sir Zex to stay with him, thinking that having Sir Zex around would give him a chance to get away from all of the other girls. And it would prove to be effective, as Sir Zex would decide that he would stay in Naruto's room for the night, upsetting both Asya and Rias. However, Naruto would quickly calm them down, creating two of his shadow clones who would then go with the girls in the other room. He would instruct the clones to make sure that nothing weird happened and to hold out for as long as they could, the clones giving Naruto a salute as they headed away. Sir Zex would compliment Naruto on his abilities, asking him where he had learnt them and just how he had learnt to do the things that he did. Naruto would tell Sir Zex that were a rather complicated story, but if he wanted to listen, he would tell him. Sir Zex would agree, and Naruto would regale his life story, telling of the world that he originally came from. His father, the fourth Hokage, and his mother, the Nine-Tails Jinchuriki. He would explain how he was now the host of the Nine-Tails, as well as the host of the Red Dragon Emperor. This catching Sir Zex's attention. Now knowing that among his ranks in the Devils, he had someone who possessed far greater ability than he originally thought. After hearing this story, Sir Zex would thank Naruto, stating that he had grown to be rather strong, and he were wise to entrust Rias to him. Naruto would blush at this a little, thinking that it was really no big deal, and he was just doing any job that any devil would be given. However, Sir Zex would make it clear that he could never entrust anyone else to his sister but Naruto, knowing that he were a man of integrity, of honor, and of self-respect, a man of power. Naruto, however, would just think that he were nothing but a jokester, and that he would rather play pranks and eat ramen most of the time. However, Sir Zex would still want to compliment him. He would then ask Naruto what his own goals were. What did he want to do in this life? Naruto hadn't really thought of that. Sure, he had his own goals in mind, but still, what he wanted to make a reality was something that he wasn't quite sure if he could do so. But nonetheless, he would tell Sir Zex his own goals. He wanted to restore the shinobi. Now being a devil, he felt as though it would be in the underworld. He wanted to restore the world that had been lost. And with all due respect, he wanted to make the title of Hokage mean something. Sir Zex would be pleased with this answer. He would ask if Naruto wanted to challenge him someday for the title of Devil King. However, Naruto would humbly decline, stating that Sir Zex had power that he couldn't hope to rival at the moment, even if he had a longer lifespan. But that in the meantime, he would want to establish the title of Hokage in its own way, that if possible, he would wish to become the 5th Devil King. Sir Zex would tell Naruto that if he continued the path that he was going down, then surely he could make that dream a reality. Sir Zex would also ask Naruto, had he ever thought about taking a wife? Naruto would again blush at this answer as, sure, the idea of having a wife seemed nice, but finding the right girl would be more than difficult. And then he would come to think of all the girls that had been in his life, and he didn't want to hurt anyone by picking one over the other. Of course, each girl was special and unique, as he would explain. He would talk about Rias, her strong qualities, and her leadership, stating that those were the things that he admired most about her. Her ability to trust in her comrades and to get things done. She was someone that he would gladly follow in the combat. He would talk about Akano and her free-spirited nature, noting that she could be a bit promiscuous at times, but all in all, she were much more deeper than what she appeared to be. He would note the kindness of Asya and her sweet loving nature. He would note that Koneko had a rather soft side under her hard shell. He wasn't quite sure how he felt about Zenobia. The two didn't really see eye to eye at first, but Zenobia was making an effort to change. And after everything that she had been through, being claimed a heretic and having nowhere to go, he just couldn't abandon her in the efforts that she were making. And it wasn't like she was ugly, although she was trying to force eggs, and that was a different story. Sir Zex would hear all of this, how Naruto viewed each girl in the household. And before he went to sleep, he would leave Naruto with this bit of information, stating that now that he were a devil, he were now allowed to participate in the culture and lifestyle of devils. And among many of the cultures and traditions that they carried, one was that they could have multiple wives. Naruto, wondering if Sir Zex were just playing with him, he would be very serious, noting that for Naruto, he needed to be realistic. If he wanted to establish a clan, a future for shinobi devils, he would probably need multiple people to have the genes needed to perform his style of technique. he would probably need more than one wife. Of course, he would tell Naruto not to do so just for the sake of doing so, but that if he were going to go down the road of having multiple wives, then he should choose good quality women. Women that had the same virtues that he admired. And then and only then could he build a very strong household. With that, he would give Naruto good night as he would go to sleep in his sleeping bag, while Naruto would be left alone in bed to ponder everything that he had been told by Sir Zex, from being a Devil King to potentially having multiple wives. He wasn't sure if he were fully on board with that idea, but he wasn't against it either. The next day, Naruto would be walking to school alone, as Rias had to show her brother around town, and Asya were waiting for Zenobia. Naruto being left alone with his thoughts, as he made his way across the bridge to the academy. When it seemed no one else were around, a young boy would be standing on the other side of the bridge. A young boy with white hair. As he would walk closer to Naruto, Naruto would get a strange feeling in his arm, feeling as if he had met this young man before. As the two stood face to face, the young man would introduce himself as Vali, the White Dragon Emperor, or the Vanishing Dragon. Naruto would be shocked to see that the White Dragon Emperor was someone as young as himself, and that he had shown up here of all places. As the two stood eye to eye, Vali would admire Naruto and his power, noting that in all his years he had never met someone who he thought could truly be a challenge, but that Naruto could be such a challenge. Naruto would thank Vali for the compliment, as well as thanking him for his assistance with Kokobile, although he admitted that he would have had it handled. Vali would simply laugh at this, stating that while Naruto was strong, he weren't quite there yet to think that he could beat Kokobile on his own, although he wasn't too far off the mark. As the two would continue their conversation, sizing up one another, both Zenobia and Kiba would arrive with their swords drawn, creating distance between them and Vali. With Asya arriving soon after, Naruto would hold her back, as Vali would state that he had not come for a fight, and that even so, outside of the Red Dragon Emperor, the others wouldn't really pose much of a threat. Although, if they wanted to try their luck, they were more than welcome to. Vali would then address that Naruto's sacred gear was still not fully developed though, and for that reason he could not fully pose a challenge to him. Also, Naruto had to deal with his other inner demons. Unknown that he were referring to whatever else lied within him. Naruto knowing that he was referring to the nine-tailed fox. He would ask how much did he know, and Vali would say that he didn't know much, but he knew enough to know that Naruto was out of sync. There was an imbalance within him. Instead of viewing his powers as separate, he should view them as equal, as one power. If he failed to do so, then he would never get a full grasp of his potential. Mocking Rias, who had now appeared also next to Naruto, as Rias would make it very clear that if he were working under the orders of the fallen angels, he would find nothing here. Vali would again state that he had not come for a fight. He had merely come for a talk with the Red Dragon Emperor, bidding them a farewell before leaving. With that, everyone else would regather themselves in their nerves, as they headed to school for the open house, which was about as eventful as an open house could be, between having embarrassing parents taking photos of you and so on and so forth. Although Naruto would meet some interesting people, among them being Sona Citree's older sister, Seraphal Leviathan, one of the Devil Kings of the Underworld, who had the title of Leviathan. who he would note liked to dress like a magical girl and seemed like someone who could be pretty cool to hang with, although Sona would say otherwise. As well as meeting Rias' father, who, for someone who should have been of older age, seemed rather young and in his prime. Rias being even more embarrassed as they would all meet at Naruto's house once again, as they all looked through the embarrassing photos that had been taken throughout the day. Rias, ultimately feeling even more embarrassed than before, would head to her room to be left alone, although Naruto would go to check on her and see if she were alright. As the two were alone in the room, Rias would ask Naruto if he were glad that he had met her, if he regretted at all joining this life. Naruto would simply laugh and say that his life had definitely changed and become rather different than how he originally pictured it, but that he had no regrets, and that for the most part he actually thanked Rias, giving him the chance to live a dream that he could now make a reality. He wasn't quite sure how he was going to do it, but the one thing he knew was that he had a chance, and for that he was grateful, thanking Rias for everything that she had done for him. With that, Rias would move forward to give Naruto a kiss once again. However, they would be stopped by Asya, who would also feel as if Rias were making advances, and she would rush to Naruto's side as well, stating that she were not going to lose in this war. Sir Zex would make a joke that starting wars would never end well, especially amongst the women. Making his presence known, before leaving that night, he would give Rias a specific order: to release the other bishop. While Rias thought it would be dangerous, he would explain that in the time of the bishop's sealing, she had become far more stronger and added more members to her household. And also, besides believing that she were ready based off her fights with Phoenix and Kokubile, he believed that Naruto would be the key in the bishop's development. With that, Rias would follow the orders given to her, and the next day, the House of Grimry would arrive to what appeared to be an abandoned room in the clubhouse. However, the room had not been abandoned, but in fact, it had been sealed away. For within this room lay one of the more powerful members of the House of Grimry, whose power was so great and unstable that it had to be sealed for everyone's own safety. Rias would undo the seals, being disguised as caution tape, and open the door, as they would go to unveil the other bishop. As Rias opened the door and everyone would walk inside, they would see a rather dark and small room. They would see a bed, and it looked as if someone had been living there. However, the only thing they could hear were whimpers, coming from a chest box on the other side. Rias would walk over to the chest box, talking to whoever was inside, telling them that it was time for them to come out. However, a whining voice would simply state that it were too scary, and that they didn't want to go back into the world. Naruto asking who could be inside the box, Rias would slowly open it, and Naruto would see what he believed to be a girl. However, that would quickly change as Kiba and the others would laugh, before telling Naruto that that was not a girl, but it was in fact a boy. Naruto being very confused by this and asking why was such a cute, boy dressed in girl's clothes. The youngling stammering as he said that he just liked to wear girls' clothes. Naruto would feel as if everything he thought he knew was a complete and utter lie. And for some reason, he couldn't help but feel a strange sense of irony. Somewhere far, far, far away, a young boy would sneeze as he were walking through the fields with a man with bandages around his face and a large blade on his back. The older man would ask the young boy if something were wrong, and the young boy would simply explain that, for whatever reason, He felt as if someone had a strange sense of irony, and that he were somehow the butt of some joke in some other world. The masked man telling him to stay focused on the mission at hand, as they had an assignment to do, as they were making their way to the land of waves. Back to the universe. Rias will reveal that the young boy's name was Gasper Bloody, and that he were a first-year student who was half human, half vampire. She would reveal that Gasper was, in part, the user of the sacred gear known as Hidden Balor View, the ability to stop time, an ability that was so dangerous that he had to be sealed away, for he could accidentally stop time at random places, noting that if he stopped time on people or certain things, they would have no idea that they had been caught in a time loop in the first place. Gasper being very scared of his powers and simply hiding within a box, knowing that he didn't want to cause trouble for anyone, and that he too were scared of his own abilities. While Rias wanted to help Gasper, there was certain things that had to be done before the summit that were to come in a few days, and that she had to go to a meeting with her brother, along with Akano and Kiba, as Sir Zex was interested in Kiba's new weapon, the Holy Devil Sword. And with that, she would leave his training in the care of the other members of her household, but especially Naruto, stating that when it came to things like training and developing one's skills, Naruto seemed to have a good grasp on that sort of subject, and as such entrusted him to help Gasper. Naruto stating that he wouldn't let her down, but he had to wonder if he could be a good teacher at all, noting that when it came to teaching himself that were one thing, but teaching others could prove to be rather difficult. However, everyone would decide to give it a chance, trying their own ways to help Gasper develop his powers. Zenobia and Konako taking things a bit too far, Zenobia chasing Gasper around with Durandal, forcing the young boy to run for his life unless he wanted to be cleaved in half by the large blade. And Konako took things a bit overboard as well, speed walking and chasing him around the field with a plate full of garlic. Saji would then arrive after hearing that Rias had unsealed her bishop, wanting to see just how things were going, as Naruto would bring him up to speed on the situation. In that exact moment, Azazel would appear once again, Naruto and the others getting their guards up. However, Azazel would simply tell them that he hadn't come for a fight, and that even if they all ganged up on him, they probably wouldn't do much damage, outside of the one with the boosted gear that was. He could prove to be a bit of a challenge, but even still, they would all fall just the same. With everyone still on edge, he would explain that Rias hadn't been wise to unuse someone with the Hidden Balor View, although he had come to see that boy with the Holy Devil Sword, although Naruto would remark that Kiba weren't here. Looking back at Gasper, he would state that that power could be rather dangerous, and they had to make sure that they kept it under control, knowing that they should probably use Saji's sacred gear, the Black Dragon Pulse, the Absorption Line, the power of the prison dragon that could absorb energy from whatever it was attached to. Saji being surprised that his sacred gear could be that powerful. Although he would suggest that there was another way to get the dragon under control, and that would be by drinking some of Naruto's blood, although Gasper would be very much against it. Before leaving, however, Naruto would ask just why Azazel hadn't told him the truth from before, and why he spent so long pretending to be someone else. Azazel would simply admit that he were bored, and he wanted someone to hang out with, and Naruto was a pretty cool dude. They enjoyed talking and playing video games, and well, they had some good guy bonding time. While Naruto was still angered with Azazel for everything that had happened, even he couldn't admit that playing video games was still pretty fun, albeit not with someone who seemed to orchestrate a lot of the things that happened in your life behind your back. With that, Azazel would leave, and everyone else would get back to work trying to train Gasper. They would come up with one method of having Saji absorb some of Gasper's extra power, while tossing small volleyballs to allow him to stop it with his sacred gear. Although he would have a very hard time doing so, and he would try to run away a few times himself. However, he would be stopped by Konako every time, who would drag him back. Gasper would once again feel as if he were no good and would go back to hiding. Rias, hearing about the situation, would try to get Gasper to come out, but it would prove to be useless. Rias would explain Gasper's backstory to Naruto, telling how he were a descendant of a noble clan of vampire, and that Gasper had been despised for being a half-breed, as he were half-human. She would also state that he were not looked favorably upon the humans either, so it seemed as though he spent his whole life being hated, especially for the power that he contained within him. Naruto, feeling he could relate, as he too had power that he couldn't understand or fully control himself. He felt akin to Gasper in a way, and as such, he felt as though he had a way of training him. While Rias seemed worried about not being able to help Gasper in everything that she could, Naruto would simply give her a thumbs up, telling her to leave it to him, and that he was going to make sure that Gasper would be up to snuff with his training. Rias would look relieved, thanking Naruto for his help, as she would leave it up to him. Naruto would sit at the door and talk to Gasper for a bit, explaining his own situation in the meantime, and about how he had a power that was hard for him to control as well. Talking not only about his boosted gear, but also about the 9 tails that dwelt within him. The relationship between Naruto and Kurama had become rather stalled to this point. While Kurama did not want to admit it, Naruto was slowly winning him over. However, his deep-seated hatred and resentment would not allow him to just freely cooperate with Naruto. So for now, their talks had stalled. Ultimately, Naruto was going to have to overcome the hatred within him. He wasn't sure when that day would be, but he knew that if he were ever going to get a mastery of the power within himself, he would have to come for the hatred, not only within his own heart, but within the heart of the 9 tails. Gasper would be shocked learning about everything that Naruto had gone through, and would look up to him even more. Naruto would tell Gasper to follow him, as the two would head into the forest. Walking away from all of the loud noises and everyone else, they would sit in a clearing under the full moon, the both sitting cross-legged and sitting side by side, as Naruto would create a small Uzumaki chain from the palm of his hand. As the chain glowed, he would tell Gasper to hold on to it. Gasper would cautiously do so, and Naruto would allow his aura to slowly flow through the chain, Gasper feeling the warm and inviting nature that Naruto had. It seemed as though Naruto had the ability to make friends with just about anyone. As Gasper felt the soothing sensation, Naruto would have Gasper focus. He would take a leaf, and he would place it on Gasper's forehead. He would tell him that he was going to meditate and focus on keeping the leaf on his forehead for as long as possible, to feel the sensation, and to add it to his battle review. Gasper would have a hard time getting it at first, but Naruto would take the time and teach him. Slowly throughout the night, Gasper would be able to keep the leaf on his forehead longer and longer and longer, eventually getting a good hold of it all. Whenever Gasper felt overwhelmed, he would just hold on to the chain that Naruto made, the link that held the two of them together. He would feel the warm and soothing sensation of Naruto's aura and his presence, calming him down and reducing his anxiety. Naruto would teach Gasper about developing his own will, the will of fire, or at least that was what had been passed down to him from his father. Naruto would explain that the will of fire was something that was carried within the hearts of many powerful shinobi from his world, that his father had it, and that the people who his father had trained with had it as well. He would tell Gasper of the amazing stories of the mighty shinobi from the village hidden in the leaves, like Hashirama Senju and his brother Tobirama. He would tell of the stories of the Professor Hiruzen Sarutobi, the third Hokage. He would tell stories of other great ninja who had lived and died honorably, such as Might Dai, the shinobi that many considered a loser, but ultimately stood his ground against the mighty 7 ninja swordsmen of the mist, defeating them in combat. He would tell stories of the young Kakashi Hatake, who overcame his struggles. He would tell the story of Minato Namikaze, the yellow flash of the Hidden Leaf Village, the shinobi who saved his village from the 9-tailed fox and saved him as well. Gasper would ask if he could develop his own will of fire, if he too could be brave. Naruto would assure him that he could if he tried. As they would continue with Gasper's training, they would watch as the leaves would fall from the trees around them. Naruto would point to specific leaves, telling Gasper to start small, using his Balor view to stop the leaves that Naruto would point out. It would be difficult at first, but soon Gasper would start to get a better control of his power. It wasn't perfect, but it was definitely a start. Soon Gasper could stop up to 30 leaves from falling at once, holding them in the air for a few minutes at a time before stopping again, taking time to have breaks and allowing Gasper to catch himself, always reassuring him, telling him that everything would be fine as long as he were around. Slowly, Gasper would start to build more confidence within himself, as Naruto would come to see him as a young brother. As a sign of his progress, Naruto would give a gift to young Gasper. It would be his headband, something that he had made as an homage to the world that he had come from. He would tie it around Gasper's arm, telling him that as long as he wore it, then he too would be a shinobi, inspiring the young half-vampire, half-devil, and giving him new hope. Soon the others would come to check and see on Gasper's process, and they would see that Naruto had done a good job of training him. They had also come up with their own way of helping Gasper, giving him a paper bag to get over his shyness, as he would wear it like a mask. And even so, it helped Gasper none the same. The next day after school, Naruto would be asked by Akeno to accompany her to a shrine, where they would be meeting a special someone, as they had something to give to Naruto. Naruto would follow her, although he wondered who exactly they would be meeting. He would not be too thrilled, as they would come face to face with none other than the leader of the angels, Michael himself. Akeno could understand Naruto's anger towards the angels, but she would remind him to be respectful in the presence of their leader, and to not do anything that could lead to conflict. Naruto, albeit upset, would make sure to keep himself composed, as they would listen to Michael and what he had to say, as he had come with something to give to Naruto, that being the sword of which were used during the last Great War, a sword capable of slaying dragons. As a sign of good faith, he wished to instill it into Naruto. With the modifications made, he would give the sword over to Naruto, allowing him to assimilate it into his boosted gear, the Dragon Slayer Ascalon. Michael would apologize to Naruto for many of the misgivings done by the church, knowing that if there were any way that he could make it up to him, he would wish to do so. Naruto would thank Michael in appreciation for acknowledging the flaws of the church. However, at the moment he couldn't think of anything, and it would be better just to end on a more cordial note. Michael would agree and bid Naruto farewell, leaving the two alone. Akano would be a bit flustered in her own way, knowing that Naruto had a very strong view when it came to angels and fallen angels. Naruto could see that something were bothering her, and he would ask if she were alright. Akano not sure what to say. She would say that she wasn't sure if now was a good time to tell him, but Naruto would say that he were open ears and he had time to listen to her. With that, Akano would tell Naruto about her heritage, explaining what Kokubil had meant when he said daughter of Barkio, as she would reveal her own lineage as being half devil, half fallen angel. Naruto could see the pain in her eyes, as she didn't want to tell Naruto, since she felt as though, with his strong opinion towards the fallen angels, who had caused so much harm to him and to Asya, she did not want to bear any of his wrath, and she understood if he hated her for it. However, Naruto would simply smile and tell her that everything would be fine. Akano finding it hard to believe that he could accept her, especially after finding out what she was. However, Naruto would simply take a hold of her hand, holding it to his chest, as he would lift up the bottom of his shirt to show the seal that had been placed on him, the seal that kept the nine-tailed fox at bay. He would show that he too carried things within him, things that made his life rather difficult at times as well. He would tell her of the incident 5 years ago, how he lost control of the nine-tailed fox's power, and how it caused much damage. Akano would remember such an incident, although they were unable to figure out who exactly had destroyed a whole city block, remarking that they thought it had been a stray devil, not believing that it could have been Naruto of all people. Now, with their bond even closer, Akano saw Naruto in a much different light, as someone who could be not just strong, but also kind and forgiving, and understanding as well. Deep down, she wasn't sure at first, but now she knew without a shadow of a doubt that Naruto was the one man for her, declaring proudly that she would gladly be his third, noting full well that there were other girls who would be vying for his attention. Although as long as she could have some private time with Naruto, then that was all enough for her. Naruto being rather flustered as Akano would throw herself upon him, although he wasn't going to deny that he didn't enjoy the hug from the rather voluptuous half-devil of the House of Gremory. The time of cuddling would not last too long, as Naruto's heightened senses could sense a strong presence of bloodlust in the air. A form of bloodlust that he had not sensed since his time with his mother in the dream dimension. As now another fiery red-haired woman had also burnt her ire into Naruto, as they would be discovered by Rias, who would pull Naruto by the cheek out of the room. Naruto knowing full well that he were going to be in for a long and bumpy night. Soon the day of the meeting would arrive. Rias would leave Gasper along with Koneko in the club room, while they would go to the principal's office in the other building where the meeting would be held. She would tell Gasper to make sure to stay under control, and to make sure that his power did not go off during the meeting, as it could potentially stall things, and that Koneko would be keeping him company. Naruto would leave his flying Raijin kunai with Koneko in case of emergencies, and he would make sure that Gasper had his headband, as Gasper would keep it tied around his arm, and his paper bag to keep him company, as well as a few video games and snacks. With that, everyone else would make their way to the meeting room. There, they would see Azazel, along with Vali in his corner. There would be Sona with Tsubaki in the corner of her older sister, Seraphal Leviathan. There would be Michael, along with his attendant, Irina. And then finally, they would all stand behind Sir Zex. As the angels, the fallen angels, and the devils, all else who were in attendance, would be hovering around the building, as the barrier would be put into place, and the meeting would get underway. The atmosphere would be very tense in the meeting room, as the leaders of all three factions had been gathered together. Sir Zex leading the meeting as they went over the incident with Kokabeel. Azazel apologizing for the incident, making full note that Kokabeel would be paying for his crimes, as he had been frozen in the lowest depths of the underworld. The three sides would discuss the steps that needed to be taken towards making peace, as well as ensuring that none would try to conspire to gain any further form of war or power. Azazel would make it very clear that he had no interest in war, and that for the most part he were fine with peace, that whatever the treaty would say would be fine with him, and that they should be done with it. Meanwhile, Konako and Gasper would be in the club room, unknown to the people in the meeting, as dark forces were gathering around, as robed figures would make their way into the club room, attacking Konako and Gasper. They were magicians of the mid-ranked devil class in terms of power, and that they had come to steal the half-vampire, to use the sacred gear of hidden Balorview for their own purposes. Konako would attempt to escape with Gasper, but it would prove to be futile, as they would be captured. And soon, the attack would be led on the summit. While in the meeting room, Azazel would also bring up another matter, more so than just the three great powers themselves, but that would be the matter of the Red and the White Dragon Emperors, knowing that peace would be predicated on their goals and ambitions. When asked, Volley would explain that the only thing he wanted were to fight powerful opponents. Azazel would remark that a war wouldn't be necessary for that goal, and Volley would agree, stating that wars could be rather messy, and he had no intention in fighting in a full-scale war. He just merely wanted to fight powerful opponents. Then they would turn to Naruto, asking what he wanted and what his goals and ambitions were as the Red Dragon Emperor. He would feel a bit nervous with everyone looking at him, as he hadn't really thought of this fully. But, trying to put it into words, he would lead with this one idea. He said that his goal would be rather ambitious. In fact, in terms of peace and the balance of power, his goal, it may come into conflict with all of that. He said that out of respect for the four great Devil Kings, he would never challenge them for their title. Of course, he would wish to spar from time to time if they were ever up for it, but he wanted to establish something of his own, to build his own legacy. He would once again retell the tale, briefly, of the world that he had come from, and he would speak of the title of Hokage, and how up until a year ago, he had no idea how he would honor such a title. But now he believed he had found the path of which to do so. Proudly, Naruto would stand among the leaders, as he would declare his goal was to become strong enough to be considered on equal footing with the four Devil Kings. And when that time came, he would establish himself as the fifth Devil King of the underworld, and that his title would stand on par with that of Lucifer and Leviathan. That title would be the title of Hokage, the fifth Devil King of the underworld. Everyone else in the room would be rather shocked even Volley, hearing such a bold declaration. Naruto would be quick to state that he had no intention of doing this through harsh or violent means, and that he were willing to put in the work as long as it would be possible. He stated that he wished for peace, and that if he did fight, he fought on behalf of the underworld and in the service of Rias Grimory and his king Sir Zex, and that he would stand against anyone who would oppose the peace, regardless of their denomination. Looking over to both Michael and Azazel. While he did want peace, he had no qualms of going to war with the angels and the fallen angels themselves. Azazel would smirk, liking Naruto's desire, stating that he truly did have a moxie. He would also ask what Naruto planned to do about the other power within him. Michael, as well as a few, asking what he meant by that. Naruto would then explain that he were not only the host of the Red Dragon, but that he also contained within him another power, an ancient power, the power of the nine-tailed fox. This would catch the attention of a few members in the room, wondering if Naruto were of yokai class. Rias would explain that in the world that Naruto had come from, there were ancient beasts known as the nine-tailed Jinchurikis, each one who had a tail representative of their numbers from 1 through 9, and that of all the beasts, Naruto had the strongest sealed within him, that being the nine-tailed fox. While it was not the same as a regular yokai from their world, they still felt that it was classified, and as such, Naruto had been officially classified as a yokai devil among her ranks, for the power that he possessed. This would take many of them aback, not knowing that Naruto had such destructive forces bottled up all within him. While in the meeting, Michael could sense the anger within Naruto, and he would ask what troubled him. Naruto would explain that he were upset with how Asya and even Zenobia were treated by the church, that it wasn't fair for them to be claimed as heretics and excommunicated when they had done nothing wrong. And Michael would agree, begging for forgiveness from the two girls for what had happened, explaining that even to Irina, they had not betrayed the church, but because of the death of God and how fragile the system had become, they couldn't find any other way to keep them within the fold without disrupting the flow. While they were saddened by this, they would show forgiveness, stating that the only thing they wished for was to have a chance to pray. However, before the meeting could move on any further, most of the area would become frozen in Balor view, only the exception being of the leaders, whose power was able to override the sacred gear, along with those with sacred power itself, who were able to withstand its forces, that being Volley and Naruto with their powers of the dragon, and Zenobia and Kiba with their specially holy swords. Rias had also been saved from this fate as well, thankfully because she were close to Naruto at the time, as they would look out the window to see that they were under attack by those of the magician faction. It would soon be realized that Gasper had been taken, and that most likely his power was being used by those of the magician faction. As such, Naruto wouldn't hesitate to go and save them, stating that he had left the Flying Rising Kunai with Koneko, and that he could simply use it to get to their location and undo the damage that had been done. Everyone else in the room would be shocked to hear this, except for Rias and her others, of course, who already knew what Naruto were capable of. But Azazel would be the most interested, noting that Naruto seemed to be full of surprises, and he wanted to see firsthand what Naruto was capable of. With permission from Sir Zex, Naruto and Rias would go to save both Koneko and Gasper. However, before leaving, Azazel would have something to give to Naruto, a way of atonement and of a way to help him. First, he would give him 2 armbands. The first one was for Gasper. It would help get one's sacred gear under control and allow them to use it within regulation. The second armband would be for Naruto, a way of payment for him to access his sacred gear without giving up another arm. Noting that the 2 conflicting forces within him made it hard for him to achieve balance, and that this would have to be a good sacrifice in the meantime. However, he would need to be careful, as there was no telling how long the limit would last. Naruto would take the armbands before taking Rias' arm, focusing on the seal on the kunai itself. Serzex leaving Rias in Naruto's hands, as the 2 would vanish in a flash. While Naruto and Rias had gone to go rescue both Koneko and Gasper, another being would enter into the fray, as within the room, a woman of tan skin would make her appearance known, shocking the others as it had been revealed to be Kalia Leviathan, descendant of one of the 4 original Devil Kings who had died in the last Great War along with God. It was revealed now that Kalia was the one behind the attack, and that it had been taking place solely because she were ready to make her declaration for the throne, to overthrow the failed system and to usher in a new era, to take the title of Leviathan that had been stolen from her by Seraphal, to kill all of the current leaders and establish the new world order. With that, everyone would escape from the room along with their frozen counterparts, as the leaders would create a barrier as a battle would now ensue, Azazel stepping to the forefront as he would confront the last descendant of the Leviathans. Naruto would quickly arrive to the area where Gasper and Koneko had been kept. Thankfully, Koneko kept the flying Raijin kunai close to her, Naruto and Rias appearing right next to him in an instant. While Rias would work to free both Koneko and Gasper, Naruto would create his shadow clones, who would quickly make work of the magicians, defeating them swiftly, before he would return to aid Rias in removing the 2 from the pillars that they had been bound to. Gasper would now be relieved to see that Naruto had arrived, keeping his promise that he would always be there for him, and Naruto giving him a smile and a head nod, assuring him that nothing were going to happen and that everything would be fine from here on out, as he would give him the armband needed to help control his sacred gear. The force would now be lifted from around the area, as the soldiers of all 3 factions would be unfrozen from their time warp, and would now engage in battle with the magicians. Volley entering into the fray as well, defeating the remaining stragglers, as Azazel would enter into the final stages of his fight with Kalia, unveiling his own artificial sacred gear, the dragon spear itself, using it to form his balance breaker and his own set of golden dragon armor, as he would engage with Kalia, who were now on her last legs, realizing that the tide of battle had turned far too quickly and she had lost the advantage. She would attempt in her last-ditch effort to bring them all down with her, a suicide bombing. However, Azazel would easily sacrifice his own arm, before spearing her and leaving her to obliteration, destroying her once and for all. As the others would be unfrozen, now aided by both Naruto and Rias, they would all move to defeat the straggling and remaining magicians, as it seemed as though the 3 groups had finally joined together in an effort to achieve true peace. However, it would not last for too long, as just as it seemed the fighting were over, Azazel would be blasted from the sky. It would be revealed that the one who had allowed for Kalia and her forces to invade from the very beginning were none other than Vali himself. As everyone would turn to the White Dragon Emperor, Naruto asking what was the meaning of this betrayal, Vali would reveal his true identity, noting that he were more than just the White Dragon Emperor, but that he too were a descendant of one of the 4 dead Devil Kings, that his father was the grandson of the Devil King Lucifer, and that his full name was Vali Lucifer. His black devil wings would grow from his dragon armor. Everyone else in shock to see that another one of the descendants had actually survived, and that even more so that he had aligned himself with a traitorous faction known as the Chaos Brigade. Azazel would quickly realize that they had all been led by the Dragon of Infinity, the one known as Orifice. When asking what their true intentions were and why the Chaos Brigade had been formed, Vali would explain that the Chaos Brigade did not want war, but on the contrary, they merely wanted a way to test their power. Vali would then turn his attention back to Naruto, looking down upon him as he would speak, stating that Naruto were rather impressive, that compared to most that he had fought, it seemed as though Naruto had more hidden within him, but it seemed as though he wasn't quite balanced, he wasn't quite focused, his mind wasn't completely in the game. He wanted all these things, but yet what was his true goal, his true desire, his true ambition? Naruto would state that above all else, he would never allow his comrades to die, and that if Vali were going to be their enemy, then he would face him head on. Vali would then mock Naruto for such bravado, stating that it had always been the fate for the Red and the White Dragons to fight, and that Naruto did not fully grasp the gravity of the situation, noting that anyone who is involved with the Welsh and the Vanishing Dragons can never live a normal life, that Naruto just being around his comrades would always put them in harm's way, that as long as he were around Rias and the others, his mother, his father, they would always be subject to danger, and that no matter how strong he was, he could never protect them all. Just like he couldn't protect Asya. This would anger Naruto, as Vali would continue to speak, taunting and pissing off Naruto, telling him that maybe if he got rid of all of those distractions, then maybe Naruto could focus and he could be more balanced in his power. Maybe if he went right now and destroyed his parents, then he wouldn't have anything holding him back. Or maybe if he laid all of his precious comrades one by one in early graves, then maybe that might give Naruto the motivation that he needed. Naruto's anger would start to rise at this. Kurama could sense the hatred building within him, and Dreg could sense the high flow of emotion gathering within Naruto. Rias as well could sense it, as the armband around Naruto would snap away. His balance breaker would start to form around his body, as more power from the nine-tailed fox would leak from within him, forming a dark red aura around the armor. as now not one, not even two, but three tails had now formed. Rias and the others seeing that Naruto's power had escalated far beyond what was normal, noting that up until now he had only ever used one or maybe two tails, but now he had escalated to three. Azazel wondering if each tail that sprouted from Naruto within this cloaked form, if it were a sign that Naruto were losing control of the nine-tailed fox's power within him. Wondering that the longer this dragged out, could this lead to even more of a dangerous situation? This was something that they had never experienced before. Naruto, already being the owner of the boosted gear and being the Red Dragon Emperor's vessel, was one thing. But now Naruto had another destructive power within him. Whatever this nine-tailed fox spirit was, it was not like other regular yokai. This was something on a much more different scale. While the dragon responded to emotion, whatever kind it might be, whether it be passion, love, hatred, sadness, this nine-tailed fox seemed to feed on hatred, and that hatred, in turn, amplified the boosted gear. As Naruto would yell out in anger, he would form a large gust of wind, as the wind would start to turn crimson red, as he would launch a wind-style wind dragon jutsu directly at Volley, who would use his divine dividing to shrink the attack until the point where it could not do its original intent of damage. Naruto wouldn't bother to make shadow clones. Instead, he would launch himself straight towards Volley, as he would use Ascalon to try to cut at the White Dragon Emperor. Albion would warn Volley that he couldn't protect him from even one cut of that, but he had done a good job in dragging out the dragon's power, noting that Naruto were filled with pure rage and hatred. Volley marking that he were better at drawing out the dragon than Naruto was at ever being one. Naruto would only roar out, yelling at Volley to not mock him, that he were not one to be trifled with. As the two would engage in combat, it would become quick that Naruto were no slouch. His taijutsu were on par with Volley in his martial arts, as the two would throw lefts and rights, sending each other flying across the battlefield. Rias would want to get involved, but her brother would hold her back, stating that this power was beyond her, and that if she got involved, she would be killed in the crossfire. As Volley would continue to mock Naruto more and more, Dreg warning Naruto to get back under control, and that this was exactly what Volley wanted. Kurama would simply yell at Dreg to shut up, that he could feel the hatred brimming within him, and that this was his true nature. Now Dreg and Kurama would be at conflict, and it would show in Naruto's power, as his fighting became more sloppy and out of sync, as the two beings within him were vying for control. Dreg trying to keep them afloat, Kurama amplifying Naruto's power with his own rage. The boosted gear and the nine-tailed fox, they were like oil and water at this point. Mixing was easier said than done. Naruto were trying to draw on both powers at the same time, but it seemed like he were doing it one after the other, and Volley could tell by his sloppiness. As Naruto would fall back to the ground once again, Dreg would yell at Naruto, telling him not to fall for the antics of the White Dragon, but instead to focus and regain himself. Within the swirl of hatred within Naruto, he would attempt to do just that. As Naruto would focus on his breathing, trying to meditate and regather his consciousness, He would assess the situation, as Dreg would explain to him that Volley's power came from absorbing the energy and redistributing it to his body, keeping him at his max peak at all times. Naruto noting that if that were the case, then all they needed to do was fill him up with so much power that he wouldn't be able to handle it, that he could overheat and burn out. With that, Naruto would create every shadow clone that were available. The clones would not have the privilege of having dragon armor, but they would be enhanced by their Nine-Tails cloaks. As each one would launch their attack at Volley maneuvering and flying in the air to evade them all. Each one would form a Rasengan, amplifying it with their own power until they became massive. As 8 Rasengans would clash into Volley in his armor, he would attempt to absorb the chakra-based attack. However, it would prove to be too potent, too much for him to bear, and soon he would feel that his sacred gear would be blown away. However, in that moment, in that phenomena, something strange would occur within Volley and Naruto. Volley were taking in a large quantity of Naruto's chakra, as he felt it flowing within his body before leaving into the armor. Something about it pierced him into his soul. No one else could see but them, but Naruto and Volley, their vision would begin to blur, as they would see something entirely new. They would see a landscape, one that were completely unfamiliar. Each one seemingly as if they were in the body of someone new. For Naruto, he were in the body of a young man with brown hair. It seemed as though he could sense all of nature around him, as he were dressed in robes of white. Volley would be in the body of a man with long dark hair, also dressed in the angelic robes. He could feel that his eyes were burning in an inferno of hatred and rage. As the two would see the battle unfolding, Naruto would be facing a man whose eyes were a piercing red. It looked as if it were a pinwheel that continued to spin. Those eyes, they looked as if they could see into the future. And Volley would see a man who was surrounded by an aura much similar to that of Naruto's. As they would continue their fight, the clash would cause the scenery to change. And the next thing they knew, they would see a valley. In this valley, 2 men in armor would be doing battle, both clad in red. One man with long and sleek black hair, his eyes looking like that of a toad as he stood on top of a large wooden golem of 1,000 arms. And Naruto could see that across from him were another man, whose eyes also burned with red, as he had long dark hair himself. He would be standing on what appeared to be the nine-tailed fox, clad in a dark blue armor. As the two would engage in an epic battle, the Nine-Tails fighting off against the wooden golem. Unknown to them, they were reliving a special history. Until finally, the last image would be back at that valley. They would see 2 warriors who were blurred from their vision. They couldn't recognize them. They had no clue who they were. It would seem as if it were a young boy in blue and white, and another young boy in orange and blue. It was obvious that whoever this young boy was, the one in the blue and white. He too possessed those eyes. And whoever this warrior was in orange and blue, Naruto felt as if he knew who this person was. They felt as if they were watching something take place in another dimension. A fight ensuing in this valley, where two tall stone statues stood behind them. Unknown to Naruto, he were actually watching his life. The universe that we all know and love. The original universe. Eventually, the visions would fade, and the two would be back in the original world that they had known, both standing across from one another. Naruto at the limit of his power. He would attempt to put everything he had into his final attack, and Volley would do the same. As Volley would create a spear of light, trickles of electricity would start to form around the spear. As Naruto would focus on the powers dwelling within him, he would try to find the balance within the storm of his own mind. He would feel as if he were in a vortex of crimson, trying to find the way out. He could feel the two conflicting powers within him, as if they were the yin and the yang of his soul, the dragon and the fox. He would remember his fight with Rainier, and he would remember using the demonic Rasengan, the Rasengan of Crimson Red. He would remember his fight with Riser Phoenix, and using the Holy Rasengan, a Rasengan of a bright, almost blindingly bluish white. As he would focus on those two entities, a new Rasengan would form in his hand. Except this Rasengan would be almost violet in nature. He had now formed the Vermilion Rasengan, a combination of devil and holy power. As Volley was floating above them, charging everything he had with his light spear, and Naruto with his Rasengan, the two armored beings would rush straight towards one another, preparing for the final clash, as their attacks would both collide. In a massive and blinding explosion, the two would be blown back in opposite directions, Naruto creating a large crater as he crashed into the ground. His dragon armor had been completely blown away, and the same could be said for Volley. As the two warriors slowly got back up to their feet, neither one wanting to back down, and Naruto preparing to give everything of himself to win this fight. Volley would be impressed, even as he coughed up blood. He would threaten that maybe now was the time to use the Juggernaut. However, Albion would warn against it, stating that he were not in the best state to be using the Juggernaut drive. Before Volley would even have a chance to do so, a magic circle would appear beside him, and from it would be a young warrior dressed in armor, flying on a cloud with a pole on his back. It would be revealed that he were Biko of the Chaos Brigade, and that he had come to get Volley as they had been assigned to fight with the Northern Earth gods. But you could see that from the fight here, that Volley had really been pushed to his limits. As he would pick up his comrade, Naruto slowly trying to make his way. Every girl from the House of Grimmy had rushed to his side, helping him up and helping him move along, as the two eyed one another. Volley would briefly smirk, telling Naruto to get stronger. This was what he expected from his rival, as the two would leave. With the battle now over, Azazel would apologize for not keeping Volley in check, and Sir Zex would also apologize for Kalia's assault, now noting that if there were truly going to be peace, and if they were going to defeat the Chaos Brigade, then they would need to work as one. Michael would walk over to the tired and injured Naruto, thanking him and asking for his forgiveness once again. However, before he left, Naruto would ask one thing of Michael. If he truly wanted his forgiveness, then he would please give Asya and Zenobia a chance to pray. Even if it didn't matter, it would mean a lot to them. Michael would feel that this were the least that he could do, and he would agree to do so as a symbol of their peace. Both Asya and Zenobia being extremely thankful, especially to Naruto, for always looking out for them. The next day, everyone would be gathered in the Occult Research Club, as they would be given some rather shocking news that Azazel had been made the advisor for the club, and that at the behest of Sir Zex, he would be in charge of helping develop the team's sacred gears. Kiba with his Holy Devil Sword, Gasper with his Hidden Valor View, and Naruto, not only with his boosted gear, but it was time that Naruto took another crack at getting that fox of his under control. Along with that, Sir Zex also had another decree that would be passed through via Azazel. Azazel would tell them all that, by order of Sir Zex, all the females of the Occult Research Club would be ordered to move in to Naruto's house. This news hitting Naruto like a bag of bricks, as he had no idea why Sir Zex would be doing such a thing. Azazel would explain that Sir Zex said something about helping Naruto rebuild the Shinobi clan, and that if he were going to do so, he were going to have to find suitable partners. Zenobia would instantly jump up at this opportunity, stating that she would be more than happy to help the Red Dragon Emperor rebuild the Shinobi race, and that if they were going to do so, they should get started, maybe tonight. Asya would also rush over to Naruto, stating that if he needed help rebuilding the Shinobi population, then she would also help as well. And Akano would not be left out either. Koneko would simply continue eating her bag of chocolate, but she would have a smirk on her face as well. However, before any of the girls could move on any further, each one would have a swift chop on the head by Rias, who would make it very clear that she were not going to lose out to the other women in her parish. With that, all of the females would be moved into Naruto's home, Naruto creating his shadow clones to help carry all of their luggage inside. Asya and Rias not being happy with the current living arrangements, they would decide that if Sir Zex were going to do this, then she was going to get him to remodel the entire house. Also catching Naruto's attention as well, as it seemed his life was now going to continue to change. As the students would continue to move on, Azazel couldn't help but have a smile, noting that Volley were after power, and Naruto was after legacy. While their paths were different, at least their intentions were pure, and that even in a world without God, the world keeps on turning. Meanwhile, in the northern region, the Chaos Brigade does battle with the Northern Earth Gods. Volley had been sleeping in the tents. His body had been undergoing a change. Unknown to him, the cycle, it does not end simply because one of the reincarnates chooses to leave his world. The world Naruto had come from had long since gone to ruin. But even so, the spirits of Indra and Ashura would remain. While the spirit of Ashura had a host, Indra needed a vessel. And now it seemed as though the time had come. As Vali would be asleep in his mind, he would be surrounded by dark figures, each whose eyes glowed a bright red, telling him to rise and awaken, that the time were soon at hand, and that now he had evolved. As Vali would slowly awaken, the last words he would hear were that he were reborn. He were no longer Vali Lucifer. As Vali would look into one of the mirrors, he would look as his eyes had changed. He had indeed been reborn, as his eyes glowed a bright red, one tomoe in each eye. He were no longer Vali Lucifer, but now he were Vali Lucifer Uchiha. This concludes What If Naruto Was in High School DxD, Season 2, Part 3, the finale, Rise of the White Dragon. Thank you all for listening to Power Core Productions and Podcastings. Again, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, share, and hit that bell for post notifications so you can stay up to date on everything that is Power Core Productions and Podcastings that is to come out now and in the future. Stay tuned for tomorrow's morning video as well as tomorrow's afternoon series where we get into What If Naruto Was in High School DxD, Love and Chaos, Season 3, Part 1. But as always, I'm Javon Harrington with Power Core Productions and Podcastings, signing off, and I'll see you next time.